our last session and the star session of this summit. A session which has a very apt topic, entrepreneurial challenges in Indian healthcare system and how to build a sustainable healthcare startup. Yes, indeed, all healthcare entrepreneurs will agree that they have special challenge as healthcare is highly regulated. Again, I appreciate the efforts being put by the organizers to get 4 esteemed panel members from government, young startup, a physician turned angel investor, a successful technology leader leading progressive healthcare startup. Hereby, I invite Mr. Ravi Narayan, CEO, T-Hub, Mr. Abhimanyu Bhosle, co-founder and CEO at Life Health. An interesting fact about Mr. Bhosle is that he turned his final year project to Life Health. A big applause for that, sir. Dr. Anu Gupta, she is an angel investor, an accomplished clinician, and startup advisor and mentor. Mr. Hari Talo at Call Health. And there's a saying in Hindi called, that is our Dr. Anirudh Malpani. Being the moderator for session is indeed going to be exciting session. Yes, sir. I request the organizer that the next summit should have at least 50% female entrepreneurs.
She should be happy. She stands out because she's the only one, right? I've told all my panelists just one thing. The job of a panel is to entertain the audience. We want some fireworks. We want people to disagree. So we definitely don't want to be politically correct where everyone says nice things about everyone else, because I don't think that serves the purpose at all. So let me get the ball rolling, and I think we can do it in whichever order, so whoever wants to put their hands up first can start. I think one big problem with the entire healthcare startup space is everyone does it with good intentions. You know, we want people to be healthier, we don't want people to fall sick, this is going to be good for the nation. But unfortunately, it's very hard to get money from investors and very hard to get doctors to accept any of these innovations. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I think a lot of these startups that jump into this healthcare or even life sciences area have greatest of intentions, and also they have some great experiences. So definitely they think they can do much better by staking it on their own and showing the rest of the establishment that they can really make this happen. But they are probably a little early in this whole journey, and that's where they begin to understand that one, the breadth of the problem that they have taken on is not necessarily a way for them to build a business. It may be what the previous experience that they had in a large hospital or a pharmaceutical company may have worked out, but they usually pick something very large, and that's where the journey has to start getting more focused and more clear about what is it that they want to do, and then pick the little battles that they want to take on. Those battles can become wars later on, but at the same time they just have to be clear what is it that they want to do and start from there.
But then, Ravi, the problem is investors say, what's your total addressable market? This is too small. Why should we bother about funding you?
No, so it's very easy for any startup to paint a very large picture and say, this is where I'm going to get to eventually. But this is being done in a phased approach. This is what I'm going to do now. This is what I'm going to establish, that this is the way to do things in a very disruptive way. And then the next phase would do something else, and so on and so forth. Some investors who do not want to be participative in the journey obviously will say that.
So again, I think that's a great point. Yes, it's a large elephant, but the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And especially when you're small, that's the right way to start. Otherwise, you end up with indigestion. So what's your experience been? Because you've been doing this for quite a few years. And would you like to share a horror story about an investor How do they piss you off, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, so I agree that a lot of people start with good intentions, and it's mostly when you really start executing things, you realize that okay, this is a lot messier than you think, and well, yeah, we started off with something completely different, and then ended up doing like we started off with a B2C model and then realized that that's not going to work because there's no B2B technology platform to back that
Ah.
up, and then sort of eventually
So you
pivoted
work
into
backwards. But
B2B.
did you do this before raising money or after raising money?
No, this was before raising money.
Ah.
So we
So
took
the
about
problem again is after you raise money and then you want to change,
Yeah.
then the investor is
Oh,
going to
that's
say, this is
impossible.
not what you came up
Yeah, yeah,
with me
that's
for.
not
So, okay, go ahead, yes.
but yeah, so it took us about 3 years to sort of really understand what to
So
solve.
how did you sustain yourself in that time without any?
Like the burn was fairly less, so we sort of sustained by putting in money ourselves. But yeah, so when
I think he's minimizing the importance of that statement. You need to remember for 3 years, these guys worked on a particular idea, decided it didn't work, pivoted to doing something else, but they had the sense not to take a money from an investor because investors are worse than your mother-in-law, let me tell you. Paisa liya hai, kuch to chahiye, and then if you're not doing it, as it is, you can't sleep at night because you can't make ends meet, and then you have this additional pressure. So I think that's the most important lesson. So when did you decide to reach out to an investor then?
So we actually were reaching out to investors throughout the process, and the first investor we closed was after we talked to about 30 people
Okay.
and repeated.
So tell me the
presentations.
worst thing which an investor told you.
So they said you're not ready and you don't know
That's
what you're
very
doing.
kind. You didn't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And
Did you say, what the hell, I've been doing this for 2 years?
Yeah, no,
You
so-
listened to me for 10 minutes and you're saying, I don't know what I'm doing?
So one of them was a doctor,
Oh.
and he's like, you don't know the industry well, and you guys don't come from that background, and you guys think you guys can come and solve everything, but that's not how it works and all. I'm like, I sent you an introduction before I came here, right? So you shouldn't have called me here for that. But then, anyways, yeah.
So were you polite?
Yeah, we were polite. We tried to be polite as possible.
Okay, but go ahead. Then finally, what happened?
And then
What
finally, yeah,
changed?
so, in 2015, we were talking with Sandeep from Nexus. It took us actually about an year. We were just like talking and talking and talking about what we are doing, how we are doing it. I think they were just sort of seeing how we approach problems and try to solve, like we were discussing right now. And yes, I think when eventually it kind of clicked in, they decided that they would like to go ahead with that. During that time, we got another offer from another investor, but then we kind of hold that on. And
So again, 2 lessons from that. Once one person gives you money, lots of people will agree to give you money. It's very difficult getting that lead investor. And I think also he said it took him 1 year to actually sign up. What do people think? I'll do a pitch and people will sign a check. If not in 1 month, in 2 months. Here, even when the conversation was going on, it still took 1 year for the check to land up. So please factor that in. Things can take much, much longer. You can't afford to run out of money by the time the check hits the bank. So Anu, you've worn multiple hats, right? You're a doctor, you've trained, you also now an investor, so you're on the other side. So what happens when people like Abhimanyu come to you with, I have this great idea, I'm going to fix the problem. How do you show them that they shouldn't, be being they need to put foundations under their dreams?
Well, first of all, I would go back to your earlier comment that investors are mother-in-laws. So I would say that angel investors cannot afford to be mother-in-laws. They are daughter-in-laws most of the time. So they're at
after signing the check. Before signing the check, I
after
think that's
signing the
different.
check and
But I
even
think that's
in
a great point.
Before
yeah.
signing the check, because they come in the venture so early on that there are hardly any numbers, but there are a lot of stories and visions. So until unless it's something which doesn't make sense at all in terms of the market you address or in terms of the very idea. Like sometimes you do come across, especially in the field of healthcare and medicine, the kind of ideas which are, to a naysayer will appear like great ideas, but somebody who's from the field can understand that there is kind of no worth in this idea. So at that point of time, I mean, you just guide them well, and you give them pointers for them to introspect.
But don't they take
reflect.
offense when you tell them this is a crappy idea?
Before signing the check, no offense is taken. After signing the check, everything is an offense, yeah.
I think that's where it has to change. I think if the startups or the entrepreneurs are so very convinced about their idea, and they're so ready to walk away from the check, that's when the investor community starts thinking in a different way. At the end of the day, it is a person-to-person interaction.
It is.
Right?
I would say conviction is always appreciated. I mean, if you do not believe in your idea, then who else will? But conviction should come with an open mind. If you're not ready to even listen to what other person is saying, then the chances are that you're really kind of, you are too much in love with your idea. So conviction is different from being in love with your idea, which can
Correct.
be dangerous.
Exactly, yeah.
So Hari, you have a great track record of having actually raised quite a lot of money. Would you like to share your experiences? Tell us the highlights and the lowlights.
The first point is that I don't know about investors, but I'm still trying to get some money out of my wife. So I can only say it's not very easy. Yeah, we have raised about 45 million so far over the last 4 years. Every conversation is, if I can say so, is like a really high effort courtship, right? You have to convince them that what you have in front of you is something that they would be willing to bet their last dollar on. It takes a lot of effort. Obviously, nobody is going to be as convinced as you about your idea. You can have the best idea in the world, like we believe we have a great platform and we are very, very convinced about what it can do. But I don't think the investors will buy into that very easily. They will give you 35 reasons why this platform is not what they would like it to be and they would like to put their money into. And more often than not, they almost force you to say that you will do what they would ideally like you to do. And I believe this is where I think the courtship really takes its meaning, in the sense that you should not succumb to that pressure. You have to say, I'm sorry, we are convinced about it, it's okay, maybe there will be another day for us. It's not easy to say that, not when you are putting money out of your pocket into the deal and it burns you hard. But I'm convinced that if entrepreneurs succumb to every little pressure that comes from every investor, you're spinning on the dime all the time, and you need to be able to step back and push it. So I think that's been our experience. We have stood the ground. People have told us, break your company down into individual focus and institutional focus, break it down into at platform, at home, at center. We have said nothing. We will stay the course. And only those who have finally come in have come in and stayed. And I think we have no regrets so far.
Great. So Hari, why is there so much misunderstanding and mistrust between entrepreneurs and investors, especially in...
I don't think it is about entrepreneurs and investors. It is between dad and son. It is between husband and wife. It is between anybody where there is a commercial transaction. There is bound to be a mismatch of expectations, and oftentimes it is like a father telling a son, I don't see you study through the whole year, you're studying it only the last 2 months or last 5 days, and yet the son comes with good results, right? So there are always these conflicts that you have with an investor. How come you are spending money on digital? Digital doesn't work, go this way, right? Why are you wasting your money on print? Print doesn't give you yield. Look at the yield, it's only 4% conversion. But there are other perceptible or imperceptible benefits that come in. So this conversation is not one of mistrust. I think this has to be a conversation that has to be open, engaging, and at times you should be able to step back and say, I agree with what you guys are saying. Maybe I'm going to try it. Believe me when I say I must have tried different somersaults for 3 or 4 months at different points of time in my 4 years. But when you try it and you realize the results are not that good or they are good, you know that somebody else is right or somebody is right and you go with it. So it's just being open, attentive, not looking at every statement coming in with suspicion. I think that's the biggest point.
Great. So Ravi, this is something which you deal on a daily basis, because the people who are coming to you are completely raw. They've got all these stars in their eyes. They read all these newspapers about so-and-so's got a company which they started 4 years ago, which is now worth $1 billion. And I'm from IIT Hyderabad. हम किसी से कम नहीं है, तो हमको भी $1 billion चाहिए. How do you deal with that?
See, I always give the benefit of the doubt to the entrepreneur. And that's something because I've been an entrepreneur myself. I know that I have really struggled through 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to actually develop a certain perspective about the market, the technology, the opportunity. And when I have been so close to the opportunity, I obviously have a lot more data points or a lot more intuition developed around that particular area. So when an investor who has had, maybe just spend 5 minutes looking at my presentation comes to me and says, whatever you're doing is not right, because in the world that I live in, none of this thing really matters, what you have done, and therefore, this is all BS. That really gets you going, right? I mean, that's probably also a little bit of the reason why there is mistrust, because you're not trusting the intuition, you're not trusting the work that somebody has done and the sacrifice that person has made to actually get to the point that they're now coming to you and making this representation. So, but at the same time, as much as I respect the perception of the entrepreneur, I also feel, I also, as an investor, even though I may have done my own little pre-due diligence, I don't think either one of us is right. They may be more right than I am, but I still defer to the traction that they would have, even if they have not raised any money or they have not.
Comes in. If a customer pays you, you have all the convincing power, so that I don't have to take a leap of faith. Would you like to tell me about your bootstrapping? Because you said you did this for 3 years, right? Before.
Yes. So, well.
Is everyone familiar with the word bootstrapping? Because everyone seems to have heard the word pitching. Everyone understands how to raise funds. But I think
bootstrapping is just like, so bootstrapping is basically funding your own, and it's ideally how it should be. I think every company should do that initially. It gives you a perspective, it helps you prioritize a lot. And yes, so that is one of the reasons we actually pivoted B2B, because we realized that, we think of
again,
us
I
as
apologize for some of the acronyms. B2B means business to business,
yeah.
which means you as a company are going to a laboratory or a hospital. And B2C is when you're going to the consumer, which is typically a patient. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. So, so initially, it was a challenge identifying what problem to solve, because you've got a run rate based on your current run rate or how much you're spending per month. You would only go so far. So you've got probably a year and a half to decide and make revenue, because nobody's gonna entertain you without revenue. So some realities which actually sort of sink in early on. Well, we actually started selling and making revenue long before we had a product. Yes, so we always wanted to basically start into a space where the revenue is real. Like basically, we are not making revenue majorly out of advertising, and where it can be easily bought. So we wanted organic traction. We are looking for products that actually sort of made a difference to sort of our customers. So looking for a product market fit. In summary, what I'm talking about is looking for a product market fit.
So the trouble with being an entrepreneur investor is we use all this jargon all the time without sometimes remembering that, especially when there are students in the room, a lot of these words are very unfamiliar. So organic means where you're serving a purpose for the end user. Traction means you actually started getting some money. People say that, yes, this is useful and I'm willing to give you money. That's a huge barrier which lots of startups aren't able to cross at all. So go on, yeah.
Yeah, and most of the times you would realize that if you start making revenue and if you somehow reach $1 million revenue in SaaS, especially SaaS is software as a service, you would basically cross 95% of the companies in the market. And that's a huge barrier to cross. And that takes a lot of strategizing, also planning, thinking outside the box a lot often.
So, Abhimanyu, the reason why investors love bootstrapped entrepreneurs is they appreciate the value of money. Yeah. They don't think कि money ऊपर से टपका है, investor के पास बहुत सारे पैसे हैं, $1 million का check लिख दिया, and now I can do what I like. So, isn't that a big problem, Anu, with actually explaining to entrepreneurs that this is precious money, it runs out, so handle it with care? How do you manage?
I would say, listening to Abhimanyu's story, that he's like a dream entrepreneur for any investor. Because when you put in your own money, that first of all shows how much you believe in your idea and how much skin in the game you have, how much you are ready to, sacrifice for your own venture. So these are the kind of entrepreneurs one should be looking for, and that I will say that I've learned the hard way, having burnt my fingers. So especially when people come with ideas and having not put their own money and sometimes not even being full-time in the venture. Sometimes entrepreneurs come to you saying that, I am in job, this is my idea. If I get money, then I'll start it. So, I would say complete no to such entrepreneurs.
But the
That's all
trouble
I
is
have
when
to
you
say.
say no, you know what the entrepreneur says? These investors are all baniyas. उनको सिर्फ पैसा समझता है. मेरा passion है, मेरी idea है, मैं इतना सारा कर सकता हूँ. I came first and no one appreciates that. How do you address that? Because I get a lot of flack on LinkedIn all the time. When I say no, I'm not going to fund an idea.
Yeah.
And then everyone says, but if you don't fund ideas, then how will entrepreneurs ever make a success?
No, so I will say most of the time that flag comes behind you, not in front of you, so I don't have to confront them. But a very easy way to deal with it, fine, like you put in your own money or your dad's money or your wife's money, whoever's money, and then come to me, show me results. So don't say no, but bring them on, like see the results and then work on it.
Okay, I think that's great. Because I think often these are very touchy, sensitive issues. But ultimately, if you value the investor's money like it's your own money, I think everyone will be sorted. So people are okay, investors are all right if companies don't do well. But they don't like it when you take a flippant attitude or you spend money without bothering to report it at all. That's bothersome. Hari, to come back to you, I think you're in a very interesting space. And what's happened with the entire healthcare profession is patients don't trust doctors anymore. There's a huge element of distrust. And you're now creating a platform where you're allowing patients to engage with doctors whom they don't have a relationship with. How are you being able to get that trust where people can say, yes, I know whom I'm talking to and I can trust this advice?
Yeah, so I think 3 years ago my answer would have been different. 3 years after this business, I can say we are seeing some definitive positive signs here. So here are my 2 or 3 observations. What is a customer? I'm calling them a customer. They could be for wellness or they could be for cure. What do they look for? They're looking for clearly accessibility, the anytime, anywhere ability to reach out when I have a problem, right? The minute you have to think 10 times before you can call your family doctor because I don't know where he is, I should call or not, the problem is a different one. So patients or customers are looking for anywhere, anytime access. The second thing they're looking for is affordability. And when I say affordability, it's not that the cost is less, but you want a first time right. You don't want to go to a doctor, then go to another doctor, then do 3 more tests, etc. The cost kind of spirals up. So they're looking for affordability. And the third thing is a largely predictable outcome, clinical outcome, is what they're looking. That's their fundamental need. I think if the patients access a platform, whether it is through text or audio or video, as long as they are able to get across to a doctor at the first cut, I think it's 50% of the problem of their mind. They feel like I can talk to a doctor anytime I want. Yes, I don't have that particular doctor whom I like, but I have a doctor to talk to. If the cost is not too high and if the cost is affordable or lower, that's another 20% of the problem psychologically gone. Now, if the outcome is good, then you have a absolutely committed customer thereafter, because now they say, oh, last time I tried, it worked, it's okay. And I'm seeing that in the context of simpler healthcare issues, that adoption has picked up a lot on the online space. So I'm seeing if it's emotional counseling, the whole psychological counseling game, nursing services, I want to get an IV done. I don't anymore go out to a hospital or a clinic and lie down and get it done. I get the person to come home and get it done. Physiotherapy at home, getting medicines delivered at home. So you're seeing some of the earlier and the easier parts of healthcare adoption happening very, very, very high on the online stuff. It's that one thing called the doctor, and that too for my what I call as the OPD instances, whether it is cold, cough, stomach upset, and so on, I am willing to go. The minute I feel a tightness in my chest, I don't want to trust any online guy. I want somebody to touch me, feel me, check me, right? So I think I'm starting to see the signs in the last 3 years. My sense is that it took us 7-8 years to become, for Flipkart and Amazon to become a household name. Healthcare will probably take the same time, even factoring the fact that in the last 10 years there is so much online stuff. Healthcare will take a little bit more longer, and we have to be ready for that.
So I think basically what he's describing is that he's able to slice and dice the market and decide for certain things this works well. So these are common day-to-day problems, and there are enough of them that this is a great platform and the right one. but it's not going to be a solution for everyone. And the good news is it's a huge space, huge market, lots of opportunities for everyone to grow. So you never need to worry, maybe he's first, but there will always be opportunities for other people to follow, so that's fine. One of the questions I want to ask you, Ravi, is a big problem is this Me Too syndrome or the copycat syndrome. Oh, Live Health has raised money, let me do the same thing. उसमें क्या बड़ी बात है? Call Health का तो ठीक है, मैं WhatsApp करता हूँ, ऐसे भी वीडियो करता हूँ. I will also create a Me Too platform. How do you deal with entrepreneurs who come to you with saying, I want to do exactly the same thing?
Yeah, so, copy paste is very good because we let Abhimanyu struggle for 3 years before he figured the magic formula out. All I need to do is just copy it and make it happen. But, it's not just the business model itself. The fact that a lot of these entrepreneurs have had this, personal journey, a visceral journey of understanding who the customers are, how did you, pivot the technology several times to get to where you are. So they have their hands on the steering wheel, they have their hands on the legs on the brake and the clutch, they know exactly what to do. So for them to continually, evolve their business model is something that I can really buy into. Now, if somebody says, okay, the model is already figured out, all I need to do is just get in at the same place and start doing. Obviously, they don't have their hands on the steering wheel or the clutch and the brake. So they just don't know how to keep maneuvering because the market will keep changing, the regulatory environment will keep changing, technology will keep changing, the consumer choices will keep changing. They may become more open or less open depending on what is in the news. So if you are not able to, navigate your way through and keep changing yourself, I think copy paste is not going to work. So I usually don't get very excited by copy paste because I feel, although there is an opportunity in that, more than 5-6 companies can serve the same market, I still feel, it has to have gone through a journey itself. There has to be an incubation period of an idea, and then you can maybe arrive at the same place and then continue the journey from there. But just starting from that and going off, I have not seen it work anywhere. I don't see it happening now because changes are happening even more fast than before.
So, Anu, you see a lot of pitches. What are some of the common mistakes which entrepreneurs make, which you kind of say, God, why are they wasting my time?
Well, I can say the commonest mistake I find is people writing me an email or a message and writing, hello, sir. So I think that will be the commonest mistake
Good one.
that I come across. You have not even bothered to kind of look to whom you're writing. It's like a common mass mail that you're sending. And really, some of the times, some very silly, like basic hygiene is not taken care of. Those are very common mistakes, I would say.
Why do you think they continue? Is it something wrong with, the way we teach students? Why are people not willing to take that little bit of extra time and effort? What's wrong?
I mean, that's what differentiates you. So whoever is taking an extra time in doing anything, in doing research on their own venture, in doing their research on what kind of investors they want to pursue, in doing research on how they want to differentiate themselves from the competitors, those will be the winning horses in the end. The others do not have that kind of sincerity or the maturity.
Okay.
So that's what I feel about it.
Okay. I've been told that we want some questions from the audience. I'm going to let everyone go through one round. So that'll take about 5 minutes and then we'll open up to the audience. Is that fine with you? So maybe I'll start backwards again. Describe one highlight of your life. What made you want to get up in the morning, and one low light. What kept you up at night? What story would you tell your grandchildren?
You're assuming that we go to sleep. We don't. Yeah, but here is my point. I think when I walked into Call Health, the idea was that we will change the way the healthcare industry performs or currently operates. We didn't come there saying, we'll change the way you consult a doctor or we'll change the way you will get medicines delivered at home. We didn't come with a point of care solution. We said we'll fundamentally boil the ocean, if I may say so. So we are a horizontal And when we came in, I saw the magnitude of thinking, and of course, we further went around and chiseled on it. I believe that what Call Health is trying to do is what Google did to information search and what Facebook did to social integration. We believe that Call Health is out there to potentially bring together everything about health, content, community, and commerce. And that's an aspiration which I think if we can even get to 60-50% of what we are aspiring, we would have changed the way the world operates in the future. So that's what keeps me up and never lets me sleep.
Are you getting a chance to mentor other entrepreneurs? Are people reaching out to you?
Oh, yeah. So the good news is, actually, for about a year now, we have been, if I may use the word, resisting opportunities coming in from different parts of the world, like Brazil, South Africa, Indonesia, etc., saying, can we take this platform to our market? And we said, no, we have a 2-year testing, which we have been doing between 16 and 18. Only after we have tested, and we have serviced about 1 million orders in the last 2 years, we feel now that we have got things right for scale. And so this is the time when we are starting to now even bring in more and more, integration and play around us.
So Anu, a lot of investors have this FOMO piece. Everyone seems to be investing in this space. I better get into that space or otherwise I won't back the next unicorn. I'll lose a chance. Has that happened to you?
I would say I'll give you another term, and that is JOMO. That is the joy of missing out. So from FOMO, I turn it into JOMO, and I let it go if kind of it doesn't fit into my criteria from any basis. Maybe everything is good about it, but maybe the check size required is too big from what I'm comfortable with. Maybe the valuation is too high. Sometimes it's a perfect story, but when you meet the entrepreneur, you somehow get a gut feel that he or she is not the kind of person who is sincere about the idea. So if I don't feel comfortable, then I go for JOMO, and that works well for me.
But you're part of a network, right? So there must be various other people in your network. Some are doing this the first time. Some have do it. How do you educate other newbie angel investors in your network? Because they must be asking you for advice.
See, I would say it's not my job to educate them, but it's definitely their job to educate themselves.
Sure, good.
And the very reason that like me and both my husband, we didn't invest on our own and rather joined various networks was because of this learning process.
Perfect.
Because it is something which we didn't know anything about.
Sure.
So we had to learn from scratch, and that's where you learn. We have reached out to people who are more seasoned than us, and we learn from them. And similarly, very new people or even wanna investors who want to invest but do not know what to do, they come to us, and whatever questions they have, we definitely guide them on that from our experience.
Abhimanyu, do you find all this, there's been a lot of hype with Startup India, and then you get all these angel tax notices, and you get all this problem. Do you kind of feel disillusioned? I should have just taken a job and, I'd be driving a...
No, not really, actually. Never. It never even occurred to my mind.
So isn't it frustrating that you get all these notices from the income tax department for no rhyme or reason, then you reply, then you get called, and you say, "मैं तो लोगों का भला करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ."
Fortunately, we didn't have any of those.
But your friends must have received them.
Yes. Yes. So, but yeah, there have been other situations where we've thought something similar.
Tell us.
But then we never really thought about having a job as such. Like that was never.
You're unemployable. Is that what you're saying?
No, not really. Like we work with people. Like we like to work with others.
Just kidding.
So one of the things is we wanted to differently in healthcare was I was interning in a health tech company. I realized that the most common thing in healthcare companies was everyone worked in silos, and everybody thought that they can build every part of the system.
Perfect.
And that never happened in the technology space, and we from the technology space, when we ventured in, and we realized that these people are idiots if they think they can do it alone, right? And we started working with one player at a time, and sort of growing and growing, and the philosophy was that was to democratize data, right? And was to make data available for any provider or any source who is owning the data at their fingertips when they want it for free. And the free was important because like we knew that nobody's going to pay if we really, and it would really come out as bad if we really start charging for data or whatever. So and that was not in our philosophy. So we wanted to make data available because we know the minute data is available, people are going to build in like a lot of platforms to make sense of that data and to build on that data. And yeah, so.
So Ravi, you're the one who has the most experience. At what point do you tell an entrepreneur, this is not working, I think you should call it a day and do something else? Because that must be hard, they're having to deal with the failure. And the reality is failure is much more often, much commoner than success, but no one talks publicly about failures. We only talk about the successes. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs then don't understand the emotional angst and the loneliness and the difficulty of being an entrepreneur. Would you like to share?
Yeah. So, these kinds of conversations are very common. In fact, one of those conversations was recollected yesterday. So this was one of the startups that had come into my Microsoft program in Bangalore. So from Hyderabad, they had come over. And they were quite happy with what they had accomplished. They thought, they were on a roll, things were going well. And then I sat them down and I said, the numbers that you have is like you're getting 8 customers a month. And, you are making about 70,000 rupees or 80,000 rupees a month. That's not bad for somebody who's been around for 2 years. But really, is this really what you want to do? You have, such potential as people. You have such wonderful connects. You are people who are well respected in the industry that you are in. And is this what you are looking to do? Because one, either you have not fully expressed your full potential, or you're really not pushing into, taking the market that is completely open for you. What is this laziness about? And sometimes people take it well and they say, you know what, I'm going to make something happen. Today they're making 2.5 crores every month. And and it's a very, very difficult market. But they took it well and they actually made this happen. And there are other people who will, listen to you, be very polite, and just go away, and for the stupidest of the reasons, shut their companies down. So one of the things that I take pride in, and when I was running the Microsoft program, is I said I accelerate both success and I also accelerate failure.
Nice.
Because it's good for you both ways.
Nice.
If you're really on a bad path, it is not going to fructify into something meaningful. I rather help you shut down sooner than you spend another 6 months, 1 year, put some more of your savings into this whole journey, and at the end of the day have nothing to show for it. I might as well close you down today.
So he also commits euthanasia, right? As a doctor. Okay, great guys. Anyone else want to have a few last words, or should we open it up to the audience? Is that okay? Yeah. Will you share the mic? Yeah.
We all know. I will not introduce. What is the intersection of taking a turn back from an investor point of view and from an entrepreneur point of view? Is it different at different times, or they jointly discuss and go back?
Entrepreneur, you're really not answerable to anyone else except yourself and maybe your parents or whatever else. I think if you've taken investor money, then it becomes a lot more complicated. And again, it depends on each investor and how they look at it. And I don't think you can lump all entrepreneurs together because each entrepreneur is different. And I don't think you can lump all investors together because each investor is different. So those aren't very happy conversations to have. But the reality is you have them. And then you have to explain, okay, fine, this is one of those other things which didn't work out. What can you salvage and what can you move on?
And a supplementary question. 1 second. One more question I have. In the management books, they say that, 2 years, you get an ROI. If you don't survive, you still stay. Is it actually a benchmark when you go on a real scenario? When you talk to people, you're in a startup scenario, they say, no, hold on for 2 years. If you're sustained for 2 years, either be bootstrapping or with the investor money, model may not work. They say if for 2 years doesn't work, wrap up and go back? That's what the question I asked.
So I don't think it's fair to generalize. Obviously healthcare will take longer as compared to other domains. But I think if you've kind of continued, your team has remained intact, you still have money in the bank, you're still doing well after 2 years, then if you haven't imploded in 2 years, I think the probability of your success will be quite good. Whether you will grow exponentially, whether you will grow arithmetically, a lot of that is really not in your control. I'm sorry, someone you wanted to...
Yeah, so there's this company called as ERP Next. It's by my friend Rishabh. They're a 15-year-old company. They build ERPs, and it's an open source ERP. Really bright people. They were recently, so Gartner put them in the Magic Quadrant recently for ERP against SAP there. And they're completely bootstrapped since 15 years. So there are people who have raised funds.
Mentored a lot of people who have gone through that process. I don't think there is an answer to that, my friend. I can tell you, there are times when somebody says, you should have just stayed on for 6 more months, things would have changed. And then there are some people who would have said, you stayed 6 months too long, right? And I don't think there is an answer to it. The only point I have always suggested that people or entrepreneurs should do is, don't take that call in isolation. Go to mentors, soundboard, because you have to understand, you're sitting inside the vortex and it is so confusing and you're not sure what you should do. Sometimes it's good to step out, get somebody's opinion, look at it very dispassionately, try 2 or 3 alternatives. Like Ravi mentioned, there are possibilities that there are 2 or 3 alternatives that have been missed out and maybe you can give it a shot. But it's like selling a property. You sell a property saying nothing is happening to that place, and then damn it, 6 months later the government announces something dramatic coming in that place and the price goes up by 2x. So you can kill yourself saying, what did I do? So I don't think there is a magic wand or a secret sauce which says this is what you should do. But never take the decision in isolation when you're under stress. Step back, take 2 or 3 inputs, look at what the pattern is, then take a final call. And then don't look back, just keep moving forward, whatever it is. Because
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
So I think Indian entrepreneurs, so one is, of course, if they are moved back to their parents' house, let's say, because they want to bring their expenses down, they're not taking a salary. A lot of things are not being paid out in cash. Therefore, they feel expenses come heavy, let me try and go forward. But really, that's not your expenses. The expenses are much, much higher, and you need to factor that in. The second thing is, it's very hard when you're inside to predict what's going to happen on the outside. So it's important for you to start constructing certain hypotheses. Let's say if you're going, just like an investor, when you make a presentation to an investor, you make a presentation to yourself. In the next 6 months, or whatever, however long that particular hypothesis proves out. Let's say you say, just because this thing has not happened so far, but in the next 6 months, I will have 2 customers lined up. And I will be able to charge this much money, and I will be able to, put that business in place. And that's based on a whole bunch of assumptions that you made. And if you are saying, okay, for that, I'm willing to go for another 6 months, and for that, I'm also going to put in yet another, let's say, 5, 10, 15 lakhs. Then you are saying, okay, if that doesn't prove out, you're going to pull out. So you're creating your own constructs rather than you looking at what's in the bank and how much time you could potentially get away with without your parents and your wife, harassing you and saying, why are you not taking the call? You take the call yourself.
So I think the emphasis is, you will often regret the things in life which you don't do. And at some point, you're going to have to live with that decision. The mentor may give you some advice, an investor may give you some advice. It's over and done with. Then you're no longer top of your mind. Whereas if you take ownership of that and do it, and like I said, having a well-defined metric is par ya us par, and therefore giving it your best shot, and then not having any regrets afterwards is perhaps the best way of doing it.
So, lady, question.
We don't have enough mics.
So what is the vulnerability of a startup entrepreneur for regulator bodies, customers, multinationals who are taking an entire lot from me went to that area and told me, manufacture there and give it, we'll take the entire, otherwise we'll have a hangar here and take it from here. I had to close. That was a wise decision. I didn't lose money. I had closed down. So these mergers will take place in startup companies because of governmental policies. How sure you are with that? Is there any assurance?
So I think the first rule as an entrepreneur is shit happens. It's not necessarily just the government. It could be your co-founder decides to leave. It could be your investor doesn't give you the next round of funding. It could be, there could be a competitor who comes up in the space and then just wants to take away market share. And this happens all the time. So if you're looking for security and stability, don't become an entrepreneur, plain and simple. Then it's much better that you find a job and let someone else handle it. But if you're willing to take that risks, then two things can happen. Either you're able to stay ahead of the curve, or you're going to go under. But there are no certainties in life at all, unfortunately. And yes, that's absolutely right. I think we've all had issues, especially with the Indian government. Forget about you. What about Amazon having issues with the Indian government? I mean, it's definitely not a fair or level playing field. That can be extremely frustrating. I can sympathize. Yeah?
Women facing more challenges. So, Dr. Anu, I would like your idea on it, even you say everyone actually. What is your advice on that?
So I guess you will have to tell me the context.
So basically, I'd said, if I fund people, I have a soft corner for failed entrepreneurs. I have a soft corner for social impact entrepreneurs, and I have a soft corner for women entrepreneurs. Because I think if a woman wants to become an entrepreneur, the hurdles she needs to cross in order to do that are far higher than what a man does. And if she's still able to pull it off, she's much better qualified and much more motivated. That was my this thing. So.
Oh, well, that's a very fair point, and that doesn't apply to entrepreneurship. That applies to most of the things in life, I would say. What I would say that maybe always look for people like Anirudh Malpani who, rather see it as your strength and not as your weakness. It also depends on an individual, like whether you make something as your strength or as your weakness. A very kind of, I will say, a very maybe lame example of it. I was told I'm the only woman speaker. Now, do I see it as kind of working positively for me? Or do I see it like working against me? So finally, it all boils down to what you do with your circumstances, your skill sets, your resources, whatever you have and what you make out of it. That totally depends on you, and that holds true for any man or any woman. But if there are challenges for women, then there are also opportunities for women, which only women can have and others cannot have. So always look out for that and always play it to your strength. That's all I will say.
One last question, and then we'll stop. One last question. Go ahead.
Conversation, and let me end it up with a criticism a little bit. So literally we are sitting in a place where I consider this as a Thailand of investment. Okay, on a healthcare sphere, we do not have many restrictions from the government. Let it be the data-related restrictions like the Europe has it, and the US has it. Or imagine if one of the application has leaked out some PHI or PII information. Okay, we are not going to be penalized over here, or no one is going to rate you down. Okay, that is not going to happen in India. Okay, but when you go into the global market with these kind of applications that we are building up over here, it's altogether a different market where we can see entrepreneurs who come up with a brilliant idea. They've been making billions, and all of a sudden they do a very small mistake, and the regulatory bodies screw them up and they go out of the business. Okay, I've seen people who spend 20, 30 years in prison for something called as a white-collar crime that they have done, which they don't know that they're doing. Okay, literally, you should say that this is like a holiday for entrepreneurs. Do you agree with me? Or do you say, how are we going to...
I think the one thing I've learned after so many years is life is not fair. And I accept reality for whatever it is. Having said that, there have been times when I think I've had a raw deal, but in all fairness, there have been times when I've had lots of advantages. So I've won lots of things which perhaps I didn't deserve. There were other people who were more deserving. So I think hopefully it all balances out in the long run. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience, guys. Thank you.
Uh, yes. I would request Mr. Rajdeep Ghosh, Inder Davalush, away the mementos.